So in this video, I want to go over B2B targeting on Facebook, which, a lot of people, especially B2B SaaS and B2B companies, they always tell me you can't do it on Facebook. And that might be sometimes true, but it's actually often not true. Facebook just has a crazy amount of information and data about everyone. And some interesting stats are that 90% of people who are on LinkedIn, which is where most people think their target is, which it is, but it's a much more expensive platform. And I love LinkedIn. I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn ad specialist, and I'm not dissing LinkedIn at all, but it's definitely a more expensive platform. So if you can hit your target on Facebook, then I highly recommend that. And an interesting fun fact is that 90% of the people who are on LinkedIn, active on LinkedIn, are also on Facebook, and 48% of them are on Instagram. So your target is on Facebook and Instagram. And one thing that, most people do, and what we would always do with our clients, is cold target on a platform we can hit them more easily, such as LinkedIn, but then just use Facebook as a retargeting, Facebook and Instagram, and maybe even Google Display Network as a retargeting tool, because they are there. It's just the hard part is targeting. If we can target them on Facebook and Instagram, we're going to be able to really scale for much cheaper than on LinkedIn. But if we can't, then we get forced to cold target them on LinkedIn, which is totally cool. I do this all the time. But when we can, we should. So I just want to really dive deep and really understand targeting around LinkedIn. So here we go. There's just a kind of a framework we should be thinking. And the first place we should always look at is a lookalike audience. So here's my cool little spreadsheet. This is the kind of thing I'll fill out for every single client. But one thing we should always look at, the first place we go is a lookalike. Is there a way we can target by lookalike? And lookalike is a great B2B targeting tool. So if you have a lot of previous customers, and we can get their email addresses and upload that into Facebook, we can then create a, say, 1% or 2% lookalike audience where Facebook will take all that data and information from the list you have. And the quality of the list is really important. You need probably about 500 people at least or more to get a really good data set. But basically, Facebook will go off and take all the information it knows about those people, where they go on the internet, what kind of things they like. Facebook gets a lot of information, not just on Facebook and Instagram, but from third-party places, such as like the Pixel is installed all over the web, all around the web. So it has all this other bits of information. It's not just information it gets from Facebook itself. So a lookalike is always the best place to start. The problem with this is a lot of B2B just don't have the volume. They have big transaction sizes but very few customers. So they might have a few customers a year, but each deal size is worth 100K. So a lookalike becomes quite challenging. It's another thing we can step back. It's not as good, but it's still pretty amazing, is to retarget web visitors. And you can target, for example, we can start working our way back slowly, but you should check if there's enough web visitors on, say, a checkout page or a pricing page. This is a much more bottom of funnel type thing, so we could retarget that. Or if there's just not enough, we can go back and just do all website visitors, for example, and just put it all together if we think we could do that. And we'll always test that anyway. So yeah, lookalike is the first place I would always go to. Obviously, we do retargeting, so we just retarget everyone who hits your website. But then after that, we need to really think about how to target them. So, for example, the best place to go for B2B is probably the tools. What kind of tools are they using? So, okay, it depends who you're targeting, but are they using is there some kind of specific industry tool they use? If it's e-commerce owners, which is great to target on Facebook, which is B2B, but they're e-commerce owners, are they using Shopify or are they using Magento? And what's the difference between those platforms? Magento might be the higher revenue type, ones, or maybe Shopify is more drop shippers, but also Shopify could be a great targeting. So we need to test all this. What kind of CRMs do they use? This is really important. Are they Salesforce? Are they HubSpot? What kind of accounting software do they use? Is it QuickBooks? Is it FreshBooks? Infusionsoft is a really interesting one. Like types of people who use Infusionsoft rather than Salesforce are very different. So we need to really think about the tools. I think targeting for B2B, targeting the tools are really important. If we layer, for example, some kind of tool that they use, not many people will use QuickBooks, and you'll use QuickBooks if you're like an SME. for example. So, that's going to filter out all the random people. And we can layer this on with other forms of targeting. So, for example, if we know, okay, we have a really good foundation of a CRM they use, they're going to be B2B if they're using a CRM. So now we need to get a little bit more, focused. Are there any influencers specifically that this industry works with? It really depends on how niche the B2B industry. If you get really niche, then Facebook might not be the right targeting. Facebook might be challenging, but we need to look at the influencers. What kind of people do they follow? What kind of industry influencers are there that are talking? That your demographic will be following. One great one is the government or industry bodies. So the Law Society, for example, is a really good one. And what I would do with all of this is go into Facebook, and I'll show you this in a minute, and then we can get ideas. So the first thing is just trying to get a base foundation understanding. And other questions I always ask is like, what kind of books or magazines would they read? Do they read Inc? Do they read Fortune magazine? What brands do they like? Do they like Jaguar? Are they that kind of person who likes Jaguar? We need to really dive deep into this, or are they, do they drive Ford rather than Ferrari? It's interesting, to understand this a little bit more. Job titles is a really funny one on Facebook, whereas LinkedIn, obviously, we can target really, really laser sharp with job titles, and that's why people love LinkedIn. That's why I love LinkedIn. But with Facebook, job titles, very few people actually put their job title, there. But I would always one of my tests I would do is a job title focused targeting. And then other interests, which we can list here, which I do with every single client, but we do that from when we go into Facebook. So for example, one cool thing we can do is when we're in Business Manager, we can type in, say, for example, QuickBooks here in detailed targeting, QuickBooks, and then we click suggestion, and it'll give us a bunch of extra potential ideas that we could go, okay, there's FreshBooks, let's research that. Xero, that's a really interesting one. What's the difference between this software and QuickBooks? Are there different types of functionalities that a bigger company might want to use one over the other, and an SME? So it really depends who you're targeting, but we need to dive deeper into like, okay, what kind of accounting software would a larger company use rather than a smaller one? And it really depends on a bunch of things. But like Infusionsoft is an interesting one. So that's really good. If we're targeting, for example, Magento, which is a e-commerce platform, Magento, then here we go. So let's have a look. What does it tell us? Magento, it'll give us Shopify, WooCommerce, PrestaShop. So we need to understand all these other key e-commerce sites. What's the difference between them? Like, again, who are we targeting? Are we trying to target like e-commerce sites which are doing 100 million plus, 1 million plus, or are we doing drop shippers? Or the really small startup guys who are just getting started? We need to understand which tools they use. Shopify is more general; everyone uses, from the small guys to like medium guys. But Magento might be a little bit more mid market. So we look at all this. Okay, is it HubSpot, Infusionsoft? They're into online advertising, so we might want to layer on a Shopify store owner with, for example, they're into Google Ads. Maybe that's really interesting because they're already spending money on Google Ads, and we want to target them. So we can get a lot of interesting ideas. Look, e-commerce director, that's an interesting one. I'm going to use that actually. So do we want to target e-commerce directors? There's 4,000 of them. It's not huge, but it'll be interesting to maybe expand the audience around that. And then I would always go to the audience insights within Facebook. So if you go to this burger bar, then we can go down here to audience insights, which is, where is it? Audience insights. So we go down, click on that, and it'll get us here. So here is a really good way to just go for your research. So one thing that I really like is to see what kind of pages they like, especially. So for example, if we go to, this is location, interests. So let's type in Magento again. Let's have a look what comes up. Magento, so the ones that come up, page likes. So they like, okay, so they like Halo themes. That's interesting. They're really into this theme. So we can see if we can you do that. They're really into Funding Circle. That's quite interesting. So they're getting funding at the moment. Maybe that's part of some kind of like government scheme, because I know Funding Circle are part of that in terms of um, coronavirus schemes that are giving money to business owners. We need to understand, okay, what kind of business owners are going into Funding Circle? Is it the small guys, medium guys, large guys? OnePlus, PayPal, they're into Heineken. It's interesting. Jaguar. So we could experiment. I didn't know they would be into Jaguar. So we could experiment, for example, layering magenta with Jaguar and just see what kind of comes up. And it's all about trying to communicate to the algorithm, because targeting on Facebook is a bit more of an art than a precise science. Whereas on LinkedIn, you can literally just go, okay, I want to target, e-commerce directors, which is great. You can be super laser sharp, and I'm a massive, massive fan of LinkedIn. I actually specialize highly into LinkedIn, but B2B Facebook is a bit more of a challenging one. So we need to be, and this is why it's really challenging, but we can get it. They are there. So we need to, if we do enough tests, we can really crack it on Facebook, and you're going to get costs up to 10 times cheaper on Facebook, which means your customer acquisition cost, if you're B2B SaaS or B2B, your customer acquisition cost will just drop off, which means you can scale it more. So instead of it being £3,000 or £2,000 your customer acquisition cost on LinkedIn, it could be more like £500, £600 on Facebook. So that's the difference between, it depends on your lifetime value again. I talk a lot about this. If your lifetime value is, under 10K, we really need to crack this on Facebook. If your lifetime value is over, 15K, or the higher the better, then we can rely on LinkedIn, and we can then work multi-platform. We can do LinkedIn with Facebook and Google Display Network as a retargeting tool. So this is the breakdown that I do, and we need to every single time research, do quite an extensive research, and then that goes into something called a rapid fire test. And a lot of rapid fire tests, which I'll make a separate video on entirely, but rapid fire testing just does, it's a process that we use internally in our company for our clients, where we do this mega research thing, and then the next thing we do, we have to break that down into a bunch of mini tests, which over the course of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we test all these different audiences. We optimize for it as much as we can. We spend a couple £100 per test, and that includes different targeting types, different objectives, different like lookalikes we're targeting, but also different creatives, different copy. What are people reacting to? What kind of pain points work for them more? So all of this happens in a rapid fire test afterwards, but this is the targeting piece, and I'll talk about what we do around a rapid fire test some other time. But this is really, really important. Most people think B2B targeting cannot be done. You cannot target people if you're B2B on Facebook. I think they're missing a massive opportunity if that's what they think. Facebook can crack it, and when you do, it's so powerful. I'm not a big brand advocate of Facebook or Instagram. I actually don't agree with a lot of the way they do things. This is why I prefer LinkedIn or say YouTube. But purely from a utility point of view, and purely from just cracking a customer acquisition cost and getting that really good if you're B2B SaaS, making sure we can scale your business, we can go to your investors and say, look, this is our customer acquisition cost. It's going to be cheaper on this platform. Facebook is just really, really, it hits such a broad, large target and has so many data points on all of us that it's really important we can target them on Facebook. And if we can, we should. So that's it. I hope this was helpful. And yeah, I have actually a targeting course about LinkedIn below, not as relevant, but you can click on that and sign up to it. Thanks very much.